Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate, sponsored by BetterHelp.com. I'm Kevin Kelton, along with Greg Matusak. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Kevin, do you know what I have in common with Rudy Giuliani this week?
I have no idea. What do you have in common with Rudy Giuliani?
Neither of us are allowed to practice law in New York City.
I walked right into that one. Also here is Ward Anderson.
Hello, everyone. I also am not allowed to practice law in New York City.
And also joining us once again, someone we had once before, TV writer, producer Sue Kolinsky. Sue, welcome again.
Thank you very much. And I, as well, cannot practice law in the state of New York. It's like the dating game.
But you can practice softball, apparently. Were you at a softball reunion of some kind this past week?
I worked on a documentary with this guy, Dave Derrickson, who was a bartender at the Improv in New York many years ago. And he documented many, many things that we did in and out of the club. And there was the Show Business League softball series that the Improv participated in. He had a ton of footage throughout many, many years, and he made a documentary, and I narrated it and did the interviews.
Cool. I look forward to seeing that. Do you know when and where it's going to run?
I don't know. We're going to talk next week and discuss a game plan of what to do with it. What was great was that, we got Larry David, Ray Romano, Sarah Silverman, and then a host of other comedians that are lesser known, but have great careers, and many have gone on to be, prolific TV writers and producers. So,
out of curiosity, were a lot of the comedians really competitive, or was it we're just having fun? I've got a rubber chicken and I'm going to play, or were they game on?
Game on,
really?
on. Very, very serious. Very, very competitive. It was a nice departure for a lot of the comics, and what was shared was that, what you did on the field in some ways was more important than some of the club work, because you really wanted to make a statement with your athleticism, and you weren't competing for stage time like you would be. And it kind of gave you a lift when you walked into the club if you hit a home run or did something monumental on the field. So it really is. It's really lovely. It's really great. So we'll see.
Very cool.
I would like to see this.
Yeah, I'll send you guys a link.
We are going to open with a story that's just breaking as we started recording tonight, which is that the Biden administration apparently has ordered and carried out airstrikes on Iranian-backed militias in Syria and Iraq. I was surprised to find out this is the second time he has done something like this. He also ordered a strike of this magnitude back in February.
Guys, just like Hillary, warmonger, saw it coming.
Yeah, there'll definitely be that. But I think anytime you're attacking, an adversary, I think it's going to be a big story. I think it's going to have repercussions.
Yeah, I think that this will remind a lot of people that Joe Biden has always been a centrist. He's not a progressive, far-left liberal. He's a centrist. And part of the whole centrist thing is that when Americans are attacked and under fire, he has no problems using drone strikes and things like that. And the majority of Americans agree when American soldiers are under attack, we should attack back. So...
Yes, yeah. we must protect our interest. So one thing that I want to tell our listeners, and I've said this on the podcast before, but I said it a while ago, and who knows whether we have new listeners, but I think this is a really good idea for people. We live in a world now where military action can also be countered with cyber attacks. So when something like this happens, it used to be we'd say, well, what are they going to do in retaliation? And we'd be looking for some type of a military action or, a counterstrike. We live in a world now where that counterstrike could be cyber. So I always like to remind people, if you have investments, if you have a Schwab account or a Fidelity account or a 401k or an IRA, print out copies of all your holdings, because there's not a lot that we can do to protect ourselves against a cyber attack. But one thing you can do is make sure you can prove what you owned on such and such a date in case the financial institutions ever become the target of an international cyber attack. So just a thought. It's what I do. I print it out every 2 or 3 months, every stock I have, how many shares I have, and have it in hard copy just in case.
Okay, well, can we take a break so I can do that?
Yeah, we'll be right back.
I mean, you got to admit, it's a pretty good idea, right?
Oh, yeah.
It is a good idea.
That's,
totally.
And we'd like to thank our new sponsors, Xerox.
You're my cyber attack coach.
And talking about things that can go wrong in the world, we have to turn our attention to the tragedy in Florida this week. The tower, the apartment, or the condo unit, I should say, that came down and tragically will cost quite a bit of loss of life there. My big takeaway from this was, if you saw the video, and I think everybody has seen it, of these towers falling at 1:30 in the morning, and the video is clear. They somehow made it look like it's daytime, even though it was 1:30 at night. And it just reminds me that every place you go in America, and probably the world now, there's a camera on you someplace.
Yeah, but that don't you feel like that's kind of been going on for a long time?
Oh yeah, but it's more and more. I mean, when in Libya, when that building caught fire, that was on camera. It's just amazing to me how the world has been caught on camera, and I think it's a good thing. It doesn't bother me.
I read somewhere, and I'll have to find it for another show, but I read somewhere that one of the reasons that they still don't have much of a gun problem in the UK, especially in Great Britain, and the police are still not having to carry as many guns, is because there's so many cameras in England. Like, supposedly London itself, it's just impossible to walk anywhere and not be under surveillance somewhere at all times.
I just read an article today about, I wish I could remember where it is, whether it's New York City or another major city, where some living community, very large living community that's been having very high crime rates, they have purchased and put out into the community these security robots that roll around. They look like R2-D2, and they're taking video of everything all over the place. That has to really be freaky to see one of those things coming at you.
Yeah, so for me, it wasn't so much the videos, and that's a great point, Kevin. But the two things that kind of I've been thinking about is, one, those buildings were built, the building that collapsed was built in the 80s.
1980, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's only 40 years old. It's not an ancient. My kids go to school in buildings that were built in the 30s. And I mean, it's not a ridiculously old ancient building. And now every time I go into a building, I've been thinking, is this one going to fall down? And I know that there was a report from 3 years ago, and there were things that were missed.
I was reading, I think it may have been USA Today that maybe reported, well, they were saying that it was the building had been sinking at a rate of about like 2 millimeters per year between 1993 and 1999. But they also referenced that because it's on beach property and the ocean, and they were saying that could have something to do with the rotting of some of the structural material. And because they said there was they maybe found there was like a sinkhole and it was under the building, and then they had found cracks in the pool. So they're kind of likening it to climate change.
Yeah.
Which, at first, at first everybody's like, oh, it just has to do with structurally how the building was made. But I don't know who's telling the truth, whether some of these reports were kept under wraps. Some people that lived in the building said, yeah, we had seen some cracks, and, they were saying that they had seen some cracks in ceilings in some apartments. And also, they said that tables were slanted, so things were rolling off of tables. So they knew that something like really bad was going on. And I don't know if they were sharing this information or it was falling on deaf ears.
It's interesting that you say that, because I saw an expert being interviewed the day after or 2 days after, and he said, the chance of this being a sinking situation, he said, if that happened, there'd be uneven tables and things would not stay on tables. Now, he didn't know that to be the case. You read it someplace else that that's actually the case. He was speculating. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. And they were also saying, that if everything moves downward at the same level, it's not a huge factor. But because the buildings it wasn't happening at the same time at the same level, that's when there's a major problem.
Right. So, and again, I was reading in the Times today. So there was a report. They actually brought in some structural experts in 2018 to investigate these cracks that the residents were seeing. And the structural engineer wrote a very detailed report that found, and this is a quote, alarming structural damage. They wrote this report. It was turned over to the homeowners association there, or the condo board. They read it. They've been debating for the last couple of years about what to do first, where to get the funds for it, whether they need to have a special assessment. They were going to start the repairs in the next few months. So they waited 3 years, and they just waited too long. And there were going to be lawsuits, and it's a tragedy. Some 161 people are either missing or known to be dead. I assume that final number is going to be very close to 160, if not over it. And some of those people will never be found, not even DNA. They will just,
right.
Like when an airplane goes down, you just have to assume everyone on the airplane died, even though they don't find parts for everyone.
Yeah, and the reason why I was saying I'll never live in a condo, because, it's a group decision,
Yeah.
of how to handle things. I live in a house with my husband. It's between my husband and the dog what we do.
The dog gets a vote. I like that.
The dog gets a vote. So it's scary. It is really, really scary. And I actually live near an airport. I live near Long Beach Airport, and there are times, because you think like 1:30 in the morning. Could you imagine these people? I mean, just being like jarred, like to at a point that is just so you can't even imagine what they were feeling. Because there are times where I'll hear planes, and we're not like in the flight path, but there are times where I will hear a plane nearby, and sometimes I get so paranoid. I'm like bracing myself for the plane coming into my house.
Yeah.
It's really, really frightening.
Well, you know whose world collapsed this week? Derek Chauvin's. He's going to be doing at least 15 years, hard time. The sentence was 22.5, of course, for the murder of George Floyd. And Greg, you put this in the rundown. The question is, so racism is over, right? It's all solved.
Well, I wish.
All you had to do was watch his mother's comments to know that's not true.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. I missed? I'm sure
she said he wasn't racist.
What?
She said he wasn't racist.
And that she was a victim, just like George Floyd, that she was a victim of this terrible crime.
Oh, so she's dead too? I mean, she had someone stand on her neck for 9 minutes?
No, like because her favorite son, by the way, she did say my favorite son. I wonder what the other kids feel like.
Oh, now they're the victims. Now they're the true victims in this.
But she said my favorite son is being taken away from me, and I will probably be dead by the time he's released. Yeah.
Oh, it's tough to get that third nail in the cross by yourself, ain't it?
Yeah.
Ain't it, honey? Ain't it, honey? And for the record, you can find sympathy in the dictionary between shit and syphilis.
Was anybody surprised? Was anybody surprised at the sentencing?
I was.
I wasn't. I had hoped that it would be a little longer, but I wasn't surprised. But Warren, you're in good company with most of the TV commentators that I saw that day, who seemed to be genuinely surprised and disappointed that they thought it should have been a lot more.
No, I was surprised. I thought it would be less.
Oh,
I actually thought it would be less.
Really?
Just like I wouldn't have been surprised if he had been acquitted, right? Like these cops on trial and everything coming from it, even the fact that he was convicted. It's like I said a long time ago before they even came back with a verdict, is when I said juries don't like to convict cops. That's true. But judges also don't like to sentence cops, for very long amounts of time.
Yeah, and it'll be real telling when the other three officers go on trial.
Oh,
the other guys who were complicit in this and didn't do anything. That is going to be very, very telling. And I mean, I really feel for the families whose children or loved ones were murdered prior to this by cops, and nothing happened.
Yeah. So the Justice Department is suing Georgia over its new voting law. Merrick Garland finally did something on this particular front. People were wondering why the Justice Department wasn't moving more rapidly to counter these things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of confused on where Brad Raffensperger stands in all of this. His stance, he seems very flip-floppy to me. First of all, he claimed that, there was nothing wrong with the elections. Everything was legit. And now it seems like he's backtracking a little bit and having some issues that he feels that there needs to be some changes.
Yeah, he is absolutely behind the law that Kemp signed.
I know.
Now, he was the guy that was in the direct line of fire from Trump when they were certifying the election. But Raffensperger is also a Republican, and even though he certified these election results, he would love, frankly, I'm surprised that he's happy about a law that takes power away from his office, but he is a tried and true conservative Republican, and he is all for the shenanigans that will allow, that will keep blacks from voting en masse.
One of the reasons is he knows that he will not be in power, or he will not be Secretary of State, if blacks continue to vote en masse in the state of Georgia. I mean, we've seen this. I mean, if the voting numbers continue, there will not be a Republican governor. There will not be a Republican Secretary of State.
Right. And also, I mean, his wife, he and his wife's lives were threatened, for his stance against Trump and agreeing that the voting was secure. So, sometimes I just wonder how much of that influences these guys from flip-flopping. Well, I mean, I'm going off on a tangent, but you look at someone like McCarthy. He went off and talked about how, Trump was complicit in this and what he did was horrible. And these guys see, the influence Trump has on the base, and then they go into, I liken it to, I don't know if you guys ever watched the show Dark Shadows years ago, that soap opera, but they had an alternate world that you would walk through a door and the same character would be a different character than they were. Like it would be their evil self. And I just feel like these guys walk through this door and their evil version is on the other side. And they all do it. So I wonder whether that has some influence on Raffensperger's flip-flop on this. I don't know.
One thing that the Republicans have done here without realizing that they were going to do it, I think, is that they've called attention to this. They've called attention to something that they've been doing for many years there. And now this voter suppression, all that, people are activated now in Georgia, and they're going to start organizing groups to get people registered to vote and get the right IDs and get them out to register, to get those IDs and get them to vote and get them their jobs to give them the day off to go vote and things like that. And the Republicans have screwed themselves by trying so hard to keep people from voting. What they're doing is they're radicalizing everybody to assemble and get out the vote. Like we've always talked about for years, this kind of thing is what really gets people to get out the vote. It's anger against when you see people trying to stop you from it.
I hope you're right.
We've seen this for years in a lot of urban areas, especially black areas of voting, like 9-10 hours people have to wait in line to vote. Every year it's brought up. We had this in Cincinnati a couple years ago in Columbus. And rather than say, oh, well, we should delegate more voting machines and open up more areas for these people to vote, they say, you got a point there, but we should probably make sure no one's cheating. So then they did drop boxes. The drop boxes were a great idea to cut all the waiting down. Just drive by, drop your vote in, done. Got rid of that too. They are trying to discourage people from voting because they will get voted out. It is that whole Southern strategy thing.
Okay, the real answer is we have to bring voting technology into the 21st century.
Yes.
Going to the polls and standing in a booth and punching a card is an anachronism of the 20th century, and actually the first half of the 20th century. The Democrats should be raising billions of dollars from their donors to put towards new technologies that we can pilot in blue states, because the red states will not pilot it. But once you prove that it works in the blue states, then you can expand it out into the red states. We have to start attacking the system of voting as opposed to trying to put Band-Aids on a system that's already broken.
I'm still one of those people that says, yes, we can vote online. I get really tired of everyone talking about like, oh, you can't vote online. Online's not secure. Boy, online, can't do that. Boy, there's people can hack into. I sit there and I go, oh my God, the entire world operates online. We let the internet handle our finances, our entire life savings, our credit card numbers, all of these things. And we do that all the time without thinking about it. And all of a sudden we talk about voting and we go, as if we're back in 1983 and Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy are tapping into us with their fucking dial-up so they can play Joshua in war games. We can vote online. Calm down.
Awesome reference.
Awesome reference. Right. Great reference. Greg agrees. I think Sue does too. I do too.
And also, you talk about voting online. Has anybody have any issue when people are voting for American Idol?
Nothing.
Has there been backlash when the home audience is voting online? No. For who they think who should go to Hollywood?
Oh, of course, our Social Security numbers and our Visa card numbers are registered with a dozen sites. Every person who's not living in a shell is out there. If it's safe for you to buy crap on Amazon, well, it's safe for you to vote online.
We do our taxes that way. We get our tax refund that way. We can do everything that way. I don't understand how we talk about everything the internet can do. We're making people, we're cloning stuff, we're doing holograms and shit. And then when it comes to two things, our cars and our voting, we can't seem to run our cars on anything but the black shit we pull out of the ground. And we can't seem to vote without walking down to the local voting place and tallying our vote with the punch card, pull the curtain. I'm an American. I'm doing my duty. Thank you, Schoolhouse Rock.
Amen.
Yes. Okay, so we have a lot more stuff we want to cover. Very quickly, the Biden infrastructure plan. So earlier this week, when he announced the plan, and everybody thought, oh, man, a bipartisan plan, and we're going to have some kind of an infrastructure bill. Then the next day, Biden came out and said that he probably wouldn't sign it if it wasn't accompanied with a passed Democratic infrastructure bill that had another $1 trillion or $2 trillion in spending for different programs. And I thought, this guy must be playing three-dimensional chess, because that seems like a dumb thing to do, and yet he's Joe Biden. He's the president of the United States. He's got a lot of smart advisors. They must know what they're doing. And then we found out the next day, no, they don't know what they're doing.
No.
So where does that leave it?
Well, now he stepped back and said that that's not what his intention was. And now they're kind of back in it with him. But he's also fighting he's fighting progressives in his party too. So it's not just getting Republicans to go along with what he wants. it's getting, a lot of his party to, because if he doesn't get that second package, then he has his progressive part of his party to answer to. And that the Republicans are not going to go for what the progressives want. So,
oh no, he has to do it with Manchin and Sinema. And basically what they have to do is cobble together a bill that's large enough to turn this, the quote unquote bipartisan bill, which I believe is worth about $550 billion.
A little bit more, but yeah.
Okay. They want to get that. They'd like to get it over over $1 trillion. I think that their goal is going to be to get it close to $1 trillion. But of course, the progressives want another $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion in spending. Not gonna happen because Joe Manchin is not going to vote yes for it. So the progressives, and I hope I'm not insulting anyone here, are being dicks because I don't care what you say, Joe Manchin is in the driver's seat, and you have to put together a bill that he will get on board for. Put together a reasonable second bill, and you can pass it with reconciliation. That's all. But for progressives to hold on to this thing, and I see this in Open Fire all the time, our Facebook political group, where people go, well, if Biden would just if he had more backbone, if he just told the moderates the way it has to be, that's not the way the world works.
So the bill that he put together with the 10 senators is pretty much just, road work, bridges, things you can see. It is a basic infrastructure bill that you probably would have seen 10 years ago. It's your grandfather's infrastructure bill. It's your dad's infrastructure bill. This is
except Greg, you're right about the content, but where it's different from your father or your grandfather's infrastructure bill is this is over a $500 billion bill. That is a massive bill.
Right.
And we've gotten used to with the Recovery Act in 2008, and then with the couple of bills that were passed earlier this year for COVID relief that it got close to $1 trillion. That's sort of become a bottom line now, but it's an unrealistic bottom line. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Right. But, like you say, $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there. Pretty soon we're going to be talking about real numbers. But the thing was, originally the progressives and Joe Biden had talked about a new infrastructure bill, including Wi-Fi, 5G, childcare, elderly care. I don't want you to get too excited about that, Kevin.
I was excited about that.
I am. I'm excited about that too.
Settle down, you kids.
Everything that you said sounds like a resort vacation to me. I want all of that stuff.
Oh, I know. Bumper cars. No, but things that actually the country could use. And actually, when you think about what infrastructure is, and it's not free college for everybody. It's not free needles for, everybody. It's not all this. Well, that's Canada. But, it's not getting to that kind of crazy level. But when we're talking about and some of it does sound sort of Recovery Act type stuff. The one thing that we have in our corner, the progressives have in their corner, is that Mitch McConnell, he has to get that bridge fixed. Portman does too, from Ohio to Kentucky. It has fallen down practically. I know I drive it like 3 times a week. It is one of the most dangerous bridges in the world. And I mean, at this point, it's pretty much just 2 pieces of string with like pieces of 2x4 that cars drive across every day. And he has to get that done. Otherwise, they freak out every day. And that's going to be the thing. That's going to be the piece of cheese that will lure him out of his shell. And they will get him to get some of this 5G miracleness.
Right. He'll end up voting against the bill and then take credit for it. Hey, let's talk about some of the stuff outside of politics that's been happening this week. One of the reasons I'm very happy that Sue is here this week is that there's a sports story in the news. Carl Nassib became the first openly gay NFL player. And even though this isn't truly a sports story, it's really a culture story. I'm glad, Sue, that you're here to discuss it with us, because with all the testosterone coursing through this podcast, you know sports better than any of the three of us. So can you open this up and talk about, and again, it's more than just an athletic story, but why this is such a significant development?
Well, because he's the first openly gay man to come out while he's playing.
Yeah.
In the NFL.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
In the NFL. And that's huge. And I think, it's gonna open up a lot of doors for other athletes who have been afraid to do the same. And it's gonna cross, I think, every sport. And
what it really helps,
I just think I like almost cried.
I think what it really helps also is it helps to combat the image of what being gay is, because, even the gay community can enjoy it to a degree. But this idea of gay men as being effeminate or not masculine, that somehow being gay makes a man weaker, or that they can't play sports or can't play football or things like that. That's the other thing, is that the more and more we see gay men coming out in fields where traditionally, we said, masculine straight man things, that kind of thing. We're slowly doing away with that, right? The stereotype of the, constantly every gay man is effeminate stereotype, right?
Yeah. And Greg, you put together a great list for us, pointing out that Jason Collins was the first NBA player apparently to come out in 2013, followed by Sean Conroy in Major League Baseball in 2015. And I'm going to screw this name up probably, but Ted Fujikawa the PGA in 2018. And Greg also pointed out that a gentleman named Michael Sam was the first gay man drafted in 2014, but was cut before he got to play in the NFL.
Yeah, Michael Sam was a huge big deal, I remember, but he never quite made it through conditioning. He made it on their roster, but he never played, and then he ended up in the CFL, which isn't really football. I think it's more like hockey without ice. I'm not sure.
I'm just so amazed. I think that I saw on TV today that 70% of American adults are okay with gay marriage. Just think of that, 70%. That includes 55% of Republicans. So I do think we're living through a renaissance of some magnitude, and I wonder what the next group, who might be next to see their rights come to full fruition.
I think the L, the G, the B, the Q, but it's the T that has not really received the full acceptance in America, at least. I think trans rights are more under attack than at any before. You see a lot of states have enacted laws and just ridiculousness to attack young trans people. Starting with the bathroom laws in North Carolina several years ago to now sports laws to keep young trans athletes out. Trans rights has now become the wedge issue in many. You're going to see trans rights and that's going to be one of the big wedge issues socially this year, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I think with the trans issue, it's a lot more complicated than just being gay.
Yeah,
well, of course,
because what I'm saying is that especially in sports. And it's an issue that, I struggle with a little bit because, I have a friend whose daughter is a wrestler. She does martial arts, and they have an issue with her having to compete against a guy who's now a girl, they. I got to get that. I have to be, really careful with what I'm saying now, because then a lot of people are like, well, it's not,
No, but you're not being disrespectful. You're talking about where she was and how she is where she came from. And
yeah. So I just want to get the language correct, because people a lot of times, you're having conversations and people are like, no, it's they, it's not, it's not a he or a she, they're a they, or.
Yeah, but you're not deliberately dead naming somebody or anything like that.
No, I'm not. And thank you for saying that. But it's a tough issue for a lot of people, especially for this particular family that I'm close with, that their daughter is she's going to be in a position where she has a disadvantage within her gender, because she's not competing against guys, but she would be competing against someone who is biologically stronger than her, and a guy that, someone who would probably beat her, before being trans. It's what I'm saying? So it's a tough one.
Can I ask a question? Is
Sure.
this something that's coming up in a, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but is this something that's coming up like in the same league, or is this like a hypothetical that they might face in the future in like the next 3 to 5 years, or is this something that they are actually like in the same dojo or whatever?
Well, yeah, they are. Because
they are. This is
in competitions.
It's in competitions.
So there are trans athletes in their
Yes.
competitions.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just maybe. Or,
no, I'm not bringing it up hypothetically.
Or
I'm
they're
saying
not
that,
bringing it up. You're right. Okay.
They're not.
They're not just.
I said this on a previous episode of this show, and that is that there is not a single athlete in any major sport anywhere across North America who is a champion who is a trans athlete. For all the talk people have about, they're going to bring in trans athletes as ringers, and now all these girls got to fight a guy that's a girl, and blah, 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 and all this transphobic crap that people say and all that stuff.
But Ward, it is happening. It's not happening at the national spotlight level. It is happening apparently in this person's karate competitions, martial arts competitions. So I agree with you, and I remember that conversation.
They may compete, they may be in the competition, but my point is that there's no proof that they have any such advantage, because there is no trend of trans athletes racking up the wins and the championships. They just don't have the advantage that transphobic people are trying to say they do. That's what I'm saying. They do not actually have the advantage that people think they do.
Yeah, and I get that, because on the flip side, my niece is was a professional ballet dancer, and she now teaches, and one of her students has started transitioning from being I'm not saying it correctly, but from being a girl to a boy, basically. So, I've been talking to her about it, and I said, wow, it must be such a different experience for you. The challenge is because when you're dancing as a girl, there's just certain things that your body, like as a guy now, he has to completely change the way he dances. Like, he's not on point now. And, a lot of the way his body moves is not, it's not as feminine. And he doesn't have a lot of the body strength to lift a woman the way a guy lifts a woman, So it's just, to me, it's very challenging. And I actually talked to the guy because I was trying to do a documentary on his life while he's going through this transition. Now, he's 16 years old. He's got top surgery. He doesn't think he's going to do the bottom surgery yet. But his concern is that he doesn't know if he will ever be able to compete with the guys and be a male dancer, because he's not biologically a man. And I guess also because he started dancing kind of later in life. And he said everybody has been lovely. I mean, everybody, he didn't tell people what was happening with him, right away. And then as he started having surgery, he had to talk about it. But that's a big concern of his. And so if he doesn't make it as a male dancer, who knows? Who knows if he would have made it as a woman dancer? Was he good enough, to go all the way there either? But it's going to be more difficult for him to really shine and be and compete with other men in this field.
Well, there's nothing. I don't know of a field that is tougher, more demanding, more limited, and has a narrower career span than professional dancing. It's a
yes,
laborious
absolutely
career. It is a taxing, laborious, physically demanding career. Oh well, I mean, Kevin, your wife is a professional dancer, so I mean, that's a demanding job.
Yeah, my fiance Jessica. Yeah, Jessica, as we've spoken a few times on the podcast, had quite an illustrious career as a dancer. She was able to dance from the age of 17 until I think she retired at 28 or 29. So she had a fairly long career that was cut short by an injury. But now having her in my life for the past 7 some odd years and getting to see, I mean, it's like being an athlete. It's like being Michael Jordan. They're just different than us. And they're born with a talent, a body type, and then a commitment level. She's told stories so many times about once she started taking classes, she would get up at 4:30 on a Saturday, take 2 buses and a train from Philadelphia to New York City. And then, she could have gotten off close to where the dance studio was that she was going to, but she would get off at Grand Central 30 blocks away and walk the last 30 blocks. And, all she would eat was an apple. And the sit-ups and the exercise and the dedication. And that's just who she is.
Right.
And now she teaches Pilates and she helps bring that out of people who don't have that kind of athletic ability or dance ability. But she still has that same mindset, and it's fascinating to live with.
Yeah. I know. I my niece, she'd been dancing since she was 3. She started when she was 3 years old. And like your fiance, she had an injury in her 20s, which stopped her from, but she danced professionally, for a period of time. And she was a fantastic dancer. But anyway, I digress.
I want to get one more topic in before we say goodnight to each other. And I'm going to answer my own question I asked before, what would be the next group or who would be next in this renaissance of tolerance and acceptance? And I'm thinking maybe it's crazy diva dance and singing sensations. Because apparently Brittney Spears went to court this week to take control of her own life at the very tender age of 39. And I'm in Camp Brittney on this. I don't know the details. I don't know anything about her father, who's been running her life for the last umpteen years. But it seems to me that at 39, crazy or not, you should be able to decide where you spend your money and who you'd marry and who you have children with.
How is this even an issue?
They control her life. I remember hearing the jokes and all that. The irony in this is that the Leave Britney Alone crying guy that went viral over a decade ago was right. Like, after all of that, what's crazy about this story is that for years I'd heard Britney is being forced to do this and forced to do that kind of thing. And, like most gossip, I would hear it and just kind of let it go. But then hearing this week, I just go, I mean, stuff like her having an IUD and she can't even take it out and things like that. You go, they treat her as if she's committed, as if she's in an asylum and they get to control her entire life.
Right. Nobody did this to Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, took, probably almost $1 billion in net worth and ran it into the ground buying, monkey skeletons and crazy stuff like that. Nobody said he couldn't do what he wanted to do.
Okay. Okay. I'll be the dissenting voice for a moment. Okay. One, maybe someone should have done that to Michael Jackson. Okay. And two, I don't know Brittney Spears. I don't know her family, and I've never seen anything else. But I do remember when she freaked out, shaved her head, hit a bunch of stuff, and lost her proverbial shit. Okay. She has a history of, I don't know if I don't want to use the word mental illness, but she has history of having breakdowns, and whether they're public or not. And so there must be something at some point. Someone said, hey, you have a history of something. So we went to a judge, and we went to a therapist, we went to a doctor, and there was A, B, and C. So this is why your father's in charge for now, because you can't do this. And I see that. And I see why at this point she's like, you know what, maybe I should. And the reason she probably has an IUD was because when she was, 18 or 19, she ran away to Las Vegas with her high school boyfriend, and they had a baby together. I mean, she doesn't believe in that was like the first thing she did when she got, when she turned 18.
Well, they got married. I don't. Did she
in
have
Las
a baby?
Vegas.
I don't know if she got married for like a certain amount of hours, but I don't think you sure they had kids?
Yeah, I don't think they had a child, Greg.
I don't think they did. I think she just has kids with Kevin Federline.
I just need to say this real quick. I just need to say this. Brittney did have a breakdown, and she did shave her head in 2007. That was in 2007. She hasn't done anything public like that since then.
And I'm not sure that shaving your head is indicative of a mental breakdown.
By the way, lots of people go through breakups and shave their heads. I did it once too. Okay, so that's one thing.
Well, we've been meaning to talk to you about that, because there should be a conservatorship with you.
To keep me from spending nothing. So here's the deal. But there's more. This is the thing. She hasn't had, now maybe stuff has happened behind the scenes, and yes, we don't know, but the things that we're talking about that she did back then are things that emotionally young people do all the time, rich or not, right? And they don't have their rights taken away from them for doing it. All right. So maybe, yes, maybe she spends wildly, or maybe she goes off to Vegas and marries a dude crazy and all that. But part of life is letting people make their fucking mistakes, even rich celebrities like Brittney Spears. Now, if there's actually a mental issue there, if there's actually a handicap or some kind of a problem or a mental break or something, now you're talking. But if it's just, I got to protect her from making dumb decisions, she's 39, right? That time has long passed.
That's my point.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't understand. Is this like a lifetime conservatorship? I mean, at some point, it's like, all right, because she's dating some guy now. I don't know what's going on with the two of them. I haven't, I know she took another break from her. I guess she had a contract.
She was a Vegas resident
in Vegas. Yeah. And then she said she wanted to take a break. And she even said that she had a residency. And she was saying that she may not want to perform again. So
right. And by the way, there are tennis stars that are dropping out of tennis matches because of mental health issues. And nobody's, putting them into conservatorships.
Right. I was thinking the same, that one just recently,
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems so extreme to me.
At some point, they're literally treating her as if she is something that they own, as if she is a product that they own, that they can put out to make money from. I mean, and that's the easiest way for me to say it, because
her father analogized her to a racehorse. There you go.
And let's put it this way too, guys. She has been famous, rich and famous, since she was 15 years old. 15 years old. She's 39 now. Let her be alone. Let her be an adult. She's middle-aged, for Christ's sake.
Let her live her life.
She's middle-aged, and we're still trying to go, well, we don't want you getting out of control here. If she never wants to sing or dance again, let her do that. I could see why she would hate it. I could see why she would hate it.
Right.
So be it. Let her not do it.
Yeah. Okay. We're all on the same page there.
Yeah, because, just real quick, because Greg, you had brought up about Michael Jackson, and to me, what Michael Jackson was doing, you look at all the surgery and all the, what he did to fuck up his face, and it was horrific. I put that responsibility on all the surgeons who continually did it. Those were the people who needed to have a conservatorship against them, because, what they did was heinous. And they should have gotten their licenses taken away for allowing that.
Hear, hear. I like that. Okay, well, we ran super long. I'm going to have some editing ahead of me, but I want to thank everybody for listening. If you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline and tell your friends about us, because we would love to get more listeners so that we can all become rich and famous, and then we'll need conservatorships. So there you go. That is my goal, is to be rich enough to have someone else have to control my finances. Okay, with all that in mind, Ward, what's up for you this week to come?
Oh, if you go on YouTube, I hope you will all go on YouTube and look for a band, a Canadian band named Manic Drive. Just released this week is their new hit single, High Life, featuring a music video animated and directed by yours truly, a tribute to the old Scooby-Doo show from the 1970s. So if you like watching old Hanna-Barbera and Scooby-Doo, check out my cartoon music video for the band Manic Drive.
Yes, and I've seen some raw footage of that you showed to me while you were working on it, and it's pretty cool. So everybody go look for that. Sue, what are you up to these days?
Well, I'm actually developing a show with a production company, and so we're putting together material for a deck or sizzle to shop around. So that's a cool thing. And then on my podcast, Steve and I are going to be interviewing Brett Gelman. And if you don't know him, I don't know if you watch Fleabag. He was in Fleabag, and he was in Stranger Things, and he's a tremendous actor.
Yeah, so. Fleabag was a great series. And what's the name of the podcast again?
Culture Pop Podcast.
There you go. And Greg Matusak, what's on tap for you this week?
I'm trying to get an interview or an audition. I think you guys call them auditions. To be the next to get Conan's job. I hear he's leaving. I'm told I have a face for radio, so I think I got to be better looking than that guy. Come on.
Frankly, I think you have a larger audience here than he has. So.
I know. Come on.